Thank you. Thank you for reminding me that. Yeah. So if we uh, basically look at history as such, it is history that informs us about all the different things that happened and how we have landed here, where we are today. Now, if you look at the periodization of history, you will see that the Greek period and the Roman period, they constitute the, what should I say? They constitute the ancient period of European history. And the medieval period of European history is something that begins around the 5th or 6th century CE. Okay, it'll be around that particular time. What you will see, of course, is that the medieval period lasted till the 16th century. The Renaissance and the Reformation, are the landmarks of history, which are extremely important. With the Renaissance and with the Reformation, I was talking to you about Martin Luther and the Protestant ethic yesterday. You will see that the Protestant ethic that was unleashed by Martin Luther is something that contributed to the emergence of the modern civilization as we know it. We are a part of the modern civilization, though there was a wave in the middle where people talked about postmodernism. We will talk about that in the second semester, about postmodernism. That is because the first semester is where we are basically looking at developments in the ancient period, the medieval period, and the modern period itself. So I was trying to tell you that the important figures who are there in the modern period are Machiavelli, though he's not really a modern thinker. He's a proto-modern thinker. And we also will be looking at the whole idea of how Thomas Hobbes inaugurates the modern period of history, uh, albeit not in its total form. That work was done by John Locke. So if you look at your syllabus, like I said yesterday, the first unit is something that is going to talk about the important part of that is the interpretative method or the hermeneutics. Technically, it should be called hermeneutics. And we will not talk about that first. We will talk about the Greek period. Hermeneutics become relevant in the medieval period for various reasons, and you'll understand those various reasons when you look at the developments that took place in the medieval period. So technically, from the 16th century onwards, it is the modern period, despite the fact that there are disruptions of modernity in there are disruptions of modernity in the what should I say, in the modern period. These disruptions come in the form of Noam Chomsky, in the form of Michel Foucault, who we will be studying in the second semester, and the other disruptions came in the form of hermeneutics in the social sciences, and you will have to look at the German thinker Hans Gadamer for that, and you'll also have to look at post-structuralism. Right now, all this will sound intimidating, but once we start doing them, they will not seem as intimidating as they seem now to you. So there is this period called the postmodern period, which people tried to put forward, but that didn't happen. So a number of people say that the failure of postmodernism is reflected in the revival of liberalism, which many people call neoliberalism. Now, these are all landmines, like I told you. These are all landmines because none of them are straightforward. They all have twisted agendas. And because of the twisted agendas, what happens is that we basically get to, sorry about that. we basically get to see uh, various different forms of theorization. Now, I personally do not subscribe to the idea of neoliberalism, though there are people who will disagree with me and say that neoliberalism is a distinct form of philosophy and also form of life. I would say that it is perhaps uh, more in the nature of revival of classical liberalism. Now, when we speak of classical liberalism, we are essentially speaking about uh, people like John Locke. John Locke is a seminal figure in political philosophy. His position is as crucial and as important as the position of Plato and Aristotle is to the understanding of politics. In fact, most of the institutions of governance that we have today are those which came into being uh, in the period where John Locke basically uh, succeeded. So Locke is another person that we will be studying in a certain amount of detail, because if you don't understand John Locke, then you will not understand uh, the history of uh, the modern period properly. Now, if you see that classical liberalism succeeded for a certain amount of time, and it portrayed itself as the best solution to poverty that had stricken Europe. And what you must know is that it isn't, what should I say? It isn't uh, a simple idea that poverty had hit Europe in a bad way. It's a complicated idea. It has everything to do with the failure of feudalism in Europe. Now, while we are talking about European history, I would like to insert a uh, caveat here. The caveat is that the Europeans made the world their own domain, which was mainly due to the fact that they succeeded in being colonizers, having colonies all over the world. They succeeded in having that. So you will see that these are people who will think that their history is the history of the world. That is not true. When I'm talking about history here, let me be very, very clear. I'm talking about European history. European history, because this is something that is peculiar to Europe, and the arrogance of the Europeans can also be found in the dating system. Now, if you look at the dating system, at one time it was Jesus Christ uh, who determined two different, what should I say, two different eras. One which is called the BC, which is before Christ, and the other which is called AD, which is Anno Domino, which basically means after death of Christ. So the Europeans created their dating system, which we still follow, based in Christianity and in the, what should I say, uh, in the life and death of Jesus Christ. Now, if you look at what happened in recent years, people have tried to correct this. Many people, not in India or anywhere else, in the West itself, they felt that it was perhaps not a very good thing to basically, uh, put the whole of history in um Christianity. Okay, and therefore you will see that there has been a change now in the dating system. And for your information, I shall be using that kind of a dating system. In this new dating system, what was once called BC or before Christ uh, is something which became BCE, and AD became Anno, instead of Anno Domini, it actually became CE. So people have tried to correct the problems of the dating system. Protestant ethic, I shall talk about it, Krishna. When we come to the modern period, we are still many miles away from the Protestant ethic. We will talk about it when we get there. Don't worry about it. I assure you, I'll make it clear then. Right now, I cannot make it clear because we have to talk about primarily, uh, we have to talk about the Renaissance and the Reformation in order to talk about the Protestant ethic. So it is premature now to talk about the Protestant ethic as such. So I hope you don't mind, but we will talk about that a little later. What I want you to remember right now is that people are using the classification of CE and BCE. CE stands for Common Era, and BCE stands for what we call before Common Era. Okay, it will be that. Now you must understand that while this has gotten rid of the religious propensities, or a better word would be religious proclivities of the calendar and the dating system, it still does not solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem of what should I say? Uh, it basically continues to be the same, but with a different name. Now people, instead of AD, are saying CE, which is Common Era. Now the Common Era didn't begin with the first century. Okay, if you technically look at the Common Era, if you look at it from the point of the contents of Common Era, you'll see that the Common Era begins with colonialism and the European powers taking over the world. That is the Common Era, really. But I guess it would be a mammoth task to change the entire calendar and say the Common Era began somewhere around the 16th century if we start looking at things like that, then we have a problem on hand. And the problem that we have is, how do you date the rest of the periods? So therefore, I think it is a sensible option to call it a common era right from the first century, and also call what was BC, that is now called before common era. So please remember, when you are writing dates, so say for example, if you're talking about the glorious revolution of 1688, uh, please call it 1688 CE. Don't write AD. Okay, please call it CE because that is how people are looking at things now. And if you're talking about, say, somebody like Plato, or if you're talking about Socrates, then it should be, uh, it should basically be called uh, before common era. And for whatever it is worth, we have to follow this dating system. So I will not be using AD. I will not be using BC. I will be using this system, which is common era and before common era. So it will be CE and BCE. Please give me a few seconds. My mouth is really dried up. My throat is gone. I told you I'm a bore, but I'm not this much of a bore. It's my throat that has slowed me down a lot. If I try to speak faster than I'm speaking now, then I'll be
Sir,
squeezed.
please wait 2 minutes, sir.
2 minutes for what? Okay, so that is as far as the dating system is concerned. Now, but like I said, the common era is something that really begins with uh, colonialism, and that is a time that also coincides with uh, uh, the rise of John Locke as a philosopher. So while we are doing classical liberalism, while we are doing proto-liberalism, we will be doing Thomas Hobbes. While we are talking about classical liberalism, we will mainly talk about John Locke with a few references uh, to economists like Adam Smith, because Adam Smith contributed to the emergence of liberalism almost as much as uh, John Locke contributed. And John Locke's contribution, however, is to be considered to be far more greater than that of any economist. John Locke, therefore, gets called a political economist, and political economy as a subset of political science. Actually, I shouldn't be saying that. Political economy precedes political science. So the study of politics in the modern period was actually called the study of political economy, because people like Locke made a very strong and almost unbreakable uh, linkage between politics and economics. And in political economy, it is economy that is more important. Politics plays a supporting role. So John Locke is two things. He's a classical liberal and he's also a political economist. And we will be doing that in the third unit. Now, after John Locke, we basically study Rousseau. Unfortunately, uh, Locke, Hobbes, Locke and Rousseau get lumped together, so to speak, uh, and people call them the social contractualists. While it is absolutely true that all three of them are social contractualists, that is only in appearance. If you look at the essence, or if you look at the substance, not the essence, let's talk about the substance. If you look at the substance of the philosophies of Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, you will find that they are three very, very different people. Like I said, Hobbes is a proto-liberal. Locke is a full-blown liberal, classical liberal thinker, plus political economist. But if you look at Rousseau, Rousseau has elements of political economy. He even wrote an essay on political economy. But by and large, Rousseau is a romantic thinker. Now, romantic, please don't take it as romance, as we understand it. Romanticism is a movement, and we'll talk about romanticism when we come to Rousseau. And so you will see that though these people are called contractualists, and all of them do have a contract in their philosophy, ultimately, you must understand that there are three different types of philosophers. Rousseau is not a liberal philosopher. Some even deny that he's a rationalist thinker, which is not a it's an apocryphal argument. It's not correct. Rousseau is a combination of romanticism and rational thinking. After this, technically, we should be doing, after Rousseau, we will be doing the utilitarians, because the utilitarians are those people who recast liberalism. Okay, so if you look at people like Jeremy Bentham, James Mill, not John Stuart Mill, James Mill, his father of John Stuart Mill, these people show a certain kind of inclination towards replacing the language of natural rights with that of utility. So those of you who've had good education in your undergraduate level, you'll be able to easily understand these things. Those of you who didn't have good teachers are a rarity these days. And if you haven't had very good teachers, then all this sounds very confusing. So let me close today's lecture. I'll be closing the introduction to the syllabus now by simply telling you that we will get rid of the confusions that are there. Right now, it all seems intimidating. It all seems confusing. But as we move through the syllabus and as we explore ideas, things will become clear, confusions will clear, and you will find that there is nothing terribly difficult in understanding this. But before that, tomorrow, I would basically talk to you about why study political thought. We'll start with that tomorrow. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.